And welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I call to order the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners in this business meeting, March 19th, 2015. I'll ask Mr. Krupp, our County Administrator, to take the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and we are joined this evening by our esteemed County Counsel, Mr. Stephen Madcourt, and then to my left is our very talented Clerk of the Board, Mary Rathke.
Thank you. You all...
I've got to call the roll.
Oh, well, you're getting so much done here. Okay.
All right.
Yeah, let's do that.
Commissioner Smith.
Here. I almost said hi. Hi, y'all.
Commissioner Savas. Here. Commissioner Schrader.
Here.
Chair Ludlow.
Here. Now, if you'll all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance with no comma after nation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I'll announce that we're first going to convene as the Housing Authority Board for the next item. The Housing Authority Commissioner Paul Reynolds will not be in attendance this evening. And now, Mr. Krupp, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have a public hearing on the fiscal year 2016 annual 5-year plan. I will ask Mr. Chuck Robbins to give a staff report and recommendation.
Good evening, Commissioners, Don, Mary. I'm Chuck Robbins, Executive Director of Housing Authority of Clackamas County. This is our annual public hearing to talk about the performance of the Housing Authority, and at this particular time also talk about the 5-year plan that's included in your packet. Excuse me. The hearing really has just a couple of elements. We're going to review last year's performance of the Section 8 Public Housing and Capital Grants Program. We're going to review the proposed 2015-2025 year Public Housing Plan. It could also then give an opportunity for citizens to testify on the plan and the county's public housing needs and performance. I should say that this plan has been prepared, with a fairly long process. It was approved originally by the Resident Advisory Board. This is a board that is made up of public housing and Section 8 residents, so they have an opportunity to comment on that. So they asked us to go ahead and push this forward. We also had the plan out for public comment between January 23rd and March 10th, and no comments were received. The board does not need to take any action today. I think it's important to say that this is just a public hearing to take testimony. The Housing Authority staff will take any comments and changes that we receive, and we'll incorporate that into a final plan. That plan will then be submitted in a special meeting of the Housing Authority Board that's been scheduled for April 2nd. So let me just kind of quickly run through a couple things just to let you know how things are going at the Housing Authority. Most of you know that the Housing Authority is funded through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. I just thought I'd give you some quick little numbers here. The Section 8 program, which is the voucher program, has about 1,600 vouchers that are given to residents to find housing throughout the county. HUD pays the Housing Authority about $11.7 million in rent assistance payments, and this is money that goes directly to the landlords, so money that gets put back into the community. We also receive about $1 million for administration of the Section 8 program from HUD. Now, HUD has determined how much money it takes to run a Section 8 program, and the $1 million is about 75 to 80% of what the actual cost is. Public housing is the housing that's actually owned by the Housing Authority. We have about 540 public housing units. 140 of those are scattered sites, generally single family throughout the county. The other 400 are in 4 public housing parks. Clackamas Heights and Oregon City View Manor in Oregon City off of Holcomb, and then that has 200 units, and then we have 200 units in Milwaukee at Hillside Park and Hillside Manor across from Providence Hospital. The public housing generates about $1.4 million in rent a year, and we receive about $1.9 million from HUD for the operation of the facilities, or the operation of public housing, which is, again, about 90% of what the actual costs are. Third program in here is our capital funds program. This is money that HUD gives to the Housing Authority to actually maintain the properties. This year, we're receiving about $868,000. Since 2001, federal appropriations for this program has been reduced by 48%. Now, HUD has determined how much money we should be investing in maintaining our property, and unfortunately, current appropriation is about 55% of what that amount should be. It's not all bad news, though. There have been some real successes at the Housing Authority in the last year, and just wanted to share a couple of them with you. Again, the Housing Authority has maintained its high performer status. This means that we have met HUD's highest standards for maintaining the physical conditions of our public housing communities. It's pretty important when you realize that some of this housing was built in 1938. So we're the first public housing authority in Oregon, and definitely the oldest housing in the state. We've also met highest standards for financial management of the program, administrative management of the program, and obligation and expenditures of federal funds. Another thing I'd like to share with you is I'd mentioned the Section 8 voucher program. There are other vouchers out there. Last year, Clackamas County received 25 VASH vouchers. These are vouchers specifically for veterans. And really proud to say that Clackamas County is the only public housing authority in the region that was able to lease up 100% of their vouchers. And I think as a result of that, Clackamas County received an additional 15 vouchers this year. So 15 more veteran households we can assist, and I just signed a letter yesterday accepting an additional 6.
Yay!
So I think that's real good news for us. And I did want to mention there is one new affordable housing project that we're building. This is Town Center Greens. It is a 60-unit alcohol and drug-free housing project being developed by Central City Concern, which is a leader in alcohol and drug treatment and supportive services. This is going to be family housing that's primarily 2- and 3-bedroom units, which is pretty unique for this type of a facility. It's located near the town center. Total cost is about $14 million, and the county is contributing about $1.5 million through the home program, $1.1 million through the Housing Authority disposition funds, and we're also placing 21 project-based vouchers in that facility. And that building should be completed sometime in 2016. Now, there are a couple challenges that we're facing. I think the biggest challenge is the lack of affordable housing in Clackamas County. Right now, the vacancy rate in the affordable housing units is less than 1%. And this is having a real impact on our Section 8 program. Section 8 vouchers are given to households so that they can go out into the community and find apartments that meet a certain cost standard and are sized for their family, and these vouchers help pay for that. And what we're finding is historically, we have about a 6% turnback. Now, a turnback occurs when we give a voucher and a family can't find a unit in 120 days. So that voucher gets returned to the county, and then we go out and try to find somebody else to try to find a house. Well, right now, that 6% historically, we're at about 14%, and that percentage is climbing. So it's becoming very, very difficult. And it's really sad when you think that a lot of these families have sat on that wait list for 6 or 7 years and are now unable to find a housing unit. I guess there is a silver lining, however. We have a wait list of about 27 households in Section 8. Since July, we put out about 500, we pulled 500 names off of that wait list. So we are going through the wait list in such a quick manner that we're hoping to open this wait list sometime in the next 10 or 11 months. Now, that'll be the first time this wait list has been opened in 4 or 5 years. So that kind of talks about the performance. Let me just quickly go through some of the things in the plan. So what you have is our 5-year plan, and this plan includes a number of things. It includes the 5-year strategic plan for all of the operations at public housing, and it also then has the 1-year implementation plan. So what are we going to do in the first year? It then includes a 5-year plan for the capital fund program. So that's the money that we use to maintain our units. So we have a 5-year plan on how we anticipate using those money, and then a 1-year plan on what we're going to do that first year. And then lastly, it includes changes to public housing in Section 8 administrative plan and policies. So that's, I think, in a nutshell, what's been going on with the county, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
All right, Chuck, Commissioners, any questions before we go into the public hearing?
Chuck, I want to thank you, and you're one of the more knowledgeable people at the county on our housing program. And I always find it interesting listening to you on these statistics. We're at 14% of returned vouchers. I would assume that is because it's market-driven and the price of rentals have gone up, rents have gone up.
And that is part of it. You know, the units, affordable housing only takes, you know, is only a small part of the housing units available out there. Those are the ones to go first. One of the things the Housing Authority is doing is looking at increasing our payment standards. What I mean by that is HUD says that you can only give money to a household in an apartment at a certain rent level. And we're finding that those rent levels are higher, and they're definitely higher in some of our other outlying communities, Wilsonville, Lake Oswego, Westland. So we are looking at increasing the that payment standard in those areas, just so that we can give our residents additional units so that they could look at.
All right, we ready for the public hearing? All right, I'll open the public hearing and ask if anyone wishes to speak on this matter. All right, I'll close the public hearing, and there will be no board action on this item tonight. It will come back for adoption at the April 2nd, 2015 business meeting. So, Chuck, thank you.
Well, you're
Appreciate your
welcome.
presentation.
We have 2 items on the consent agenda.
Oh, you can
and
hang
I'll
around.
And I'll just stick around in case you have any questions.
Yes, it's time for the Housing Authority consent agenda. I'll ask the clerk to read the Housing Authority consent agenda by title.
Okay. The Housing Authority consent agenda in the matter of writing off uncollectible accounts for the 3rd quarter of fiscal year 2015 and approval to apply for a grant through Housing and Urban Development, HUD, for safety improvement grant funds. And that concludes the Housing Authority consent agenda.
All right, I'll ask for a motion.
I move we approve the Housing Authority consent agenda.
Second that.
All right, motion by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Savas. I remember taking office and we saw that there was these write-offs, which concerned me, and I think the public should know that we do lose a little money, and it's not that bad. But it's not that the people didn't pay their rent oftentimes, it's that they leave the place in a shambles, which costs us money to fix up, and then we get to say that they owe us the money. But chasing them around is kind of tough. Until they pay that money back, they will be excluded from any HUD housing anywhere. And that includes, I believe, in the nation, isn't that right, Chuck?
That is correct.
So, I think we ought to look into the future, though, about selling that to collection agencies so that they do give you a dime on the dollar sometimes. But, there should be some way to squeeze a little blood out of the turnip on this, because when they leave us that way, it costs us money to get that unit back ready, and it costs us time that unit is off the market as well. Any further discussion? All right, Mary?
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
Commissioner Savas?
Aye.
Chair Ludlow?
Aye, passes 4-0. We'll adjourn as the Housing Authority Board and now reconvene as the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners for the remainder of the meeting. We have a presentation, and it's the property tax. Oh, I'll let you introduce it, Mr. Krupp. That's your job. That's right.
Sure. This is one of the best presentations of the year.
Oh, yeah.
It is the annual property tax revenue budget update for fiscal year 2015-2016, and our very own Bob Vroman, County Assessor, is going to give us the latest and greatest information about the state of the county's financial condition.
All right, Bob, you want to take it away?
Sure. This is one of the best presentations of the year. It is the annual property tax revenue budget update for fiscal year 2015-2016, and our very own Bob Vroman, County Assessor, is going to give us the latest and greatest information about the state of the county's financial condition.
Welcome, Bob.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Ledlow. Commissioners, thank you very much for inviting me this beautiful afternoon, early evening, to tell you a little bit about what's been going on with property tax collections and also what our real estate market is looking like and how that may impact budgeting for the coming year. I might, just a side comment that could be of interest based on the last presentation that you had from the Housing Authority. Right now, very recently, some information came out. Portland, the Portland metropolitan area has the 7th highest rental rate increase in the country over the last 5 years. This last year, rents generally rose in the area of 7%. They've actually increased 20.5% over the last 4 years. The median rental rate for an apartment in the Portland metro area right now is about $1,560. So it's no surprise why affordable housing is becoming such a challenge. And not only that, as we'll see in some of the later information that I'll provide you, our real estate market has been very active as well. And certainly when housing prices are increasing, that has an impact on available housing in the area. So we can kind of start off with just some visuals of what we've been seeing in the market really over the last 2 years especially. This is new construction in actually in the Oregon City area. So we're seeing a lot more new construction both last year and this year, which is favorable when it comes to providing some additional housing inventory as well as generating some new revenue in the property tax system. This is a subdivision actually from 2 years ago. The reason I included it is just down the street from this. This is a subdivision that we saw being built out just this last year. So new construction certainly has picked up, and we're seeing a lot more of this type of activity around the county. And it's not just new construction. Our existing construction it has also been very active. As we'll see in just a moment, one of the issues that's really impacting prices around the Portland metropolitan area is really the inventory of available housing that's out there and able to be purchased, which has been probably the lowest that we've seen in 10 years. So let's look actually at not just last year, but 2 years ago. So we finished, 1/1/13, January 1 of 13, through January 1 of 14, average sale prices were up almost 13%, and the median sale price in the Portland metropolitan area almost up 13% as well. Here's one of the driving factors. Inventory was down from 3.6 months to 3.2 months, and the total market time down from 112 days to 83 days. That's the number of days that a house is actually on the market before it sells. Probably the biggest factor that we hear from the real estate industry in the local area is about the limited product that's out there and available on the market. So this last year from 1/1/14 to 1/1/15, that general trend has continued, not quite at the level that we had 2 years ago, but still very, a very strong real estate market as far as sale prices, with the average sale price being up about 7.2%. the median sale price up 7.7%. But you can see again, inventory this last year dropped again from 3.2 months to 2.3 months. And market time down from 83 days to 70 days, with still that problem of having a limited number of houses out there and available on the market. And this is really what drives prices. I can tell you in just the last 2 months, I live right here in the Oregon City area. We've had 2 houses come up for sale just down the street, really, on the other side of the community college. Both of them sold the day they went up on the market. Both of them sold for more than the asking price. Wow. And as I go out and speak with people in our real estate industry around the market, the thing that they're telling me is that that type of activity isn't necessarily unusual. If something comes up on the market and it's priced right, it's not going to be there very long. So just to give you an idea, in Clackamas County, our median sale price for January 1 of 2015 was $300,000. The average sale price, $354,000. If you compare that to just the Portland metropolitan area in general, you can see that Clackamas County actually is higher, and that's really been fairly typical over the last several years. That median sale price in the Portland metropolitan area being $285,500 with an average sale price of $333,000. All this is just pointing to the fact that the real estate market has been on its way back, and it's been steadily improving, and we're seeing that in the form of limited product on the market and sale prices certainly going up. To give you an idea of what happened in Clackamas County for January 1 of last year, you can see on the left-hand side, or to my left-hand side, under market value, our real market value for all property in Clackamas County grew from $45.9 billion to $51 billion, an increase of a little more than 11%. The assessed value, or taxable assessed value, increased from $40.3 billion to $42.3 billion, an increase of 4.8%. And that's an increase that's a lot more typical if you scroll down through the years of what we had pre-recession. The interesting thing about this slide is if you go back to the real market value column, you'll see that in 2008, our total value in Clackamas County was a little bit more than $60 billion. So our real estate market isn't all the way back yet. We still have a ways to go. It's certainly been improving over the last couple years, but we're not where we were in levels pre-recession. Our total tax roll in Clackamas County, and this is for all taxing districts, and these are the taxes that are billed to all Clackamas County citizens. That increased this last year from $649 million to $684 million, an increase of almost 5.48%. That's actually fairly consistent with that growth in real market value, and also the fact that we had some new money measures that contributed to that. And also, and I'll touch on this in just a moment, we got some additional revenue because there were fewer savings to taxpayers, and that meant that there was more revenue to tax districts because we had less compression or less dollars lost as a result of exceeding our Measure 5 limits from our first constitutional limitation. And that's actually something that you can see right here. From 2013 to 2014, the total amount of dollars lost under total M5 lost went from almost 20 million down to 13.6 million. So to taxing districts, that looks like additional revenue, which it is that they realize. To taxpayers, that's less savings that they got as a result of the Measure 5 limits. On the 2015 line, what we're estimating for this coming year is that trend will continue, and that we'll see that total Measure 5 loss drop from 13.6 million to about 10.9 million. And if you look at that general government loss column, it's down, or we expect it to be down from $339,000 to $241,000. And what that means is that in Clackamas County, we have very few of our general government districts losing revenue to the Measure 5 limits. We still have some of that loss, which you would expect to see in the education category. Even though we've seen that improve fairly dramatically, there's still almost 10.6 million that won't be collected, or we're estimating won't be able to be collected in the education category. For Clackamas County specifically, in 2014, you'll see that in the general government category, the county only was not able to collect $24,800 approximately. And again, that's the general fund revenue. I listed some additional districts that the commissioners may have interest in. They're not all necessarily county districts, but they're certainly districts that the board, in many cases, has an oversight role. And then the point really here is that revenue loss from the Measure 5 limits is on the decline, and that's favorable to the districts that fund the services that they provide for citizens with that revenue that's generated from the property tax system. This is a quick revenue history. You can see from 2013 to 2014, the general fund revenue grew from about 104,000 to 104 million to 108 million. That's general government, and that's property tax revenue. Again, I don't have an estimate about what that necessarily will be, but my expectation would be, based on our forecast right now, that we'll see county general fund revenues grow in the area of 4.25% to 4.5% again.
Bob, let me ask you a question on that. It would seem that as a practitioner of real estate for many years, including still, kind of, is that was quite a differential between the previous year and last year, and now this is a less, it looks like we'll be having less gain this year, and that surprised me since the real estate market is on fire and assessed values usually follow that.
Chair Ludlow, very good observation. Actually, our growth this last year was about I think 4.7%, and we're expecting that 4.25% to 4.5%. That's a forecast, and I tend to like to be conservative because I don't want to tell you that you're going to maybe be realizing a lot of revenue that you may not necessarily see. But the reason why it's a good observation is that our property tax system has some sort of built-in brakes that I don't think everyone really understands. And that is, of course, when you have growth, and it's driven by just the 3% in growth that we're allowed under our latest constitutional limitation, Measure 50, plus new construction, you have to have more new construction and significantly more new construction in order to make that overall percentage growth continue to increase because your base goes up. But The other thing that weighs in on that is as our real market values grow at a rate greater than 3%, we have a changed property ratio that we have to apply to new construction. And as that ratio drops, we get less of the new construction than we will get or will have gotten from the prior year. So our system actually has some built-in brakes, and those go both ways, as we saw when real market values were declining, because we still had assessed value growing, even though we had years where that real market value was declining.
You know, the other thing is, Oregon has an interesting model for collecting property tax, and Bob's given lessons on this, but again, being a real estate broker, it's very interesting. The lien period specifically on properties is January 15th, am I right?
Actually, January 1 is the assessment date.
So here's the assessment date. Now remember, when people build new homes, they're going to do it in spring and summer, right? So if they'd been halfway through a property or even to the point the foundation's there, they assess it as of that date. So it's interesting, they're not billed for that until October, and their bill isn't due until November. So it's a very interesting process, and if you pay in November, you're paying from the previous July to the next June 30th. So it's very confusing, and that lien date is very important because sometimes people in new houses will be literally occupying the property, yet they'll be taxed on the foundation and framing. Am I correct?
That's correct. And actually, I've got a slide here to show you just that. If you will, again, take a look, there it is. There's nothing about Oregon's property tax system that is necessarily simple and straightforward. We actually work on two calendars. On the appraisal side, which Chair Ludlow was just describing, our assessment date is January 1, and you'll see that again, it'll be to my left. We value what is there on the property as of January 1st of each year, and that's a statutory assessment date. The tax year actually doesn't start until July 1, which is the lien date, and runs through June 30th of the following year. So, as Chair Ludlow was pointing out, when you receive your tax statement towards the end of October, for starters, you're looking at a value that's already almost 10 to 11 months old. So in a rising market, it's not unusual for a property owner to say, I'd never sell my property for that, it's worth more. And certainly when we were going through those declining years, what we were hearing is, I couldn't sell my property for that in a million years. So it's always something that can be very confusing to our property owners and even the taxing districts. But the other thing about that assessment date is that if we have a house that's just started or it's, say, 10% complete, that's the value that we will represent on that tax statement in November. We'll represent 10% of what we expect the value of that home to be. So, and then you can see that in May, we'll be paying the last actual tax payment for the prior tax year. So, if you have questions, my suggestion is please call the assessor's office and we'll be happy to answer any questions that people may have. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I recall, and you tell us every year that you are conservative in your estimation. And I believe last year, after our collections, correct me if I'm wrong, Don, but there were several more millions of dollars brought in. Is that correct? Several million.
That's correct. We ended up realizing about $2 million more revenue than was originally projected, and we actually saved $2 million on expenditures. So that meant the county finished at about $4 million better than we expected when we adopted the budget at the beginning of the year.
So I fully understand, Bob, that I'd rather be on the low side than the high side, that's for sure. But well done on that projection last year. Commissioners, any questions of Mr. Vroman? This FYI, go ahead.
I have a question of Mr. Krupp that I bet the citizens are wondering. So what did the county do with that extra $2 million?
Well, it is currently now a part of the reserves, because I think we need to be very, very careful about how we shepherd these resources. As we're still sort of climbing out of the economic recession, and as we're looking at the projections of expenditures just to maintain current services going into the coming year, and comparing them to the general fund revenues that Mr. Roman just referred to, it's a pretty tight balance. So we want to make sure that these funds are very thoughtfully set aside to plan for the future and care for our resources as the county's needs emerge.
So in short, we did not spend it, we saved it.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Commissioner Savas?
So I guess my question is directed towards Mr. Krupp. With the regards that the 2 and the 2, which I totals of $4 million, that's above our reserve limits, or in the contingency limits of 5% and 10%, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
So it seems to me that the caution would, if the 5% and 10% contingency and reserves are not threatened, that caution shouldn't be all that. I mean, we could have ideally put some of that towards road monies, which we had a great return on, as we're telling our constituents. For example, when the roads deteriorate to a certain point, it's 13 times more money or approximate to build the road or repair the road after it goes down to a certain point. But it seems to me that if our reserves and contingency is not threatened, that $2 or $4 million, that we don't need to be that conservative with it as long as we're spending it wisely.
Well, and I'm sure that will be a part of the discussion as we're preparing for the budget for the coming fiscal year. It's important to remember, though, that, up until and unless we put together what are the projections for the coming fiscal year, you're going to hear from me an admonition that we hold off planning anything with respect to those resources, because I want to make sure that as we're looking out at expenditures versus revenues in the ensuing year, that in fact we're kind of holding things together. That, as I mentioned, expenditures in the ensuing fiscal year are actually going to, if you look at just maintaining current level, they will be just a little bit higher than what our current estimated revenues are. So if that bears true, we would be drawing down on that reserve by just a little bit, not a lot. But I want to make sure that this board and the Budget Committee has the option to be able to evaluate and prioritize the rare and endangered resources we have.
Don, just another quick question. What would you say is our largest cost that continues to rise year after year?
Well, the single largest area of cost growth is in the area of personnel. The cost of salaries and the cost of benefits, the cost of insurance, that's really.
And I think those costs far exceed the growth rate of our reserves and the rate of inflation.
Well, as currently, if we're looking at the estimates for the coming year, we're in pretty good alignment with respect to inflation and our ability to be able to cover those costs. The cost of living adjustment projected for the coming year will be at about 2.1%. We just got those figures in this last week, so that'll help temper the growth in personnel costs for the coming year.
Okay. Any more comments or questions, Commissioners? Mr. Vroman, our elected county assessor and tax collector, you have dual roles. Thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
All right, it's time for citizens' communication. I'll call you up by twos. Nancy Hall and Marge Easley. And then after them, Jim Weisenberg and Mac Woods.
No budget calendar?
Huh? Did I do something wrong?
No.
We were going to have a quick review of the budget calendar. I can wait till later, though, if you'd like, after citizen
Why don't we do it
communication.
right after the citizen communication?
Happy to
I
do that.
apologize for not catching that. Either one of you first.
Nancy Hall, Happy Valley. With me tonight are a group of my neighbors. We are here tonight to voice our concerns about the Eagle Landing development. This is a brief synopsis of some of our concerns. A major concern is the impact on the Mount Scott Elementary School. This school is a few blocks north of the site. It is directly in the path of the Eagle Landing traffic, and as you are aware, the current traffic study omitted analyzing the roads near the school. Nothing has been studied about ensuring children's safety walking to and from school. Nothing has been studied about the movement of school buses and parents dropping off and picking up children. Considering that Eagle Landing plans to build around 1,000 housing units, what kind of stress will this put on the school? Again, nothing has been studied about how an influx of new children will impact an already crowded school. What about the sewer, water, and electrical facilities? Eagle Landing may be required to pay some system development charges for these services, but these fees will not cover the cost of a new sewer or power plant. Building a development this intense will accelerate the need to build new plants, which puts the burden on all county taxpayers to cover the costs. We are concerned about the increase of crime this development will bring to our neighborhood. At the Sunnyside CPO meetings, it has been reported that since the light rail Green Line opened, crime in that area increased 50%. A development of this size will bring corresponding crime, just like at the town center. The number one concern of our neighborhood is the traffic that will be generated from this development. The main entrance street leading to this development is Stevens Road. This road continues north and cuts through the middle of our neighborhood. We will become the cut-through corridor for Eagle Landing traffic. We must have traffic mitigation to protect our neighborhood. Consider the differences between the mall and Eagle Landing. The mall has 120 acres, Eagle Landing 36 acres. The mall is 1.4 million square feet, including the new footage. Eagle Landing, 2.1 million square feet. The mall was built when nothing else was there and the roads were able to develop to cover the increased traffic. Eagle Landing is being plopped down in an already developed area with little chance to increase traffic capacity except at great expense. The constraints of the site are being ignored. The neighbors of Scott Mountain want our voices heard, and we intend to fight fiercely to protect our homes, school, and neighborhood. Will the neighbors who came tonight please stand at this time?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Savas.
So I just want to repeat what I think I mentioned to you before, Nancy, and that is that the developer has not submitted a permit or an application, and he has to do a master plan first, and part of that master planning part is a traffic study. So it's early, out of our control until there's actually an application and a master plan submitted. That's required, as is a traffic study too. And then the traffic improvements are part of the plan. What they are can't be done or determined until the study is done. So until that master plan is complete and the application is submitted, our hands are tied.
Yes, ma'am.
Marge Easley, live in Wilsonville, and I'm here representing the League of Women Voters of Clackamas County. This week is Sunshine Week, a national initiative to promote open government. And this is especially meaningful to the League of Women Voters because of our strong support of transparency and a citizen's right to know. And this brings me to the reason I'm here this evening, which is to express our concern about the process that led to the March 5th passage of a resolution to adjust transportation system development charges for the Eagle Landing Development Project in Happy Valley. We feel it is incumbent upon our elected commissioners who are responsible for the best and most efficient use of our limited tax dollars to explain fully how and why it arrived at this decision. We are aware there has been a long history surrounding this project and that this resolution is an extension of a former offer to reduce TSDC in the Happy Valley, Clackamas County Joint Transportation Area. Yet the public's memory is short, and this was an agreement that was made long ago. Yet given the significant amount of tax dollars in question, the scale of the development, and the impact it would have on transportation in the area, we believe that buy-in by the broader community should be a requirement. Specifically, we ask whether citizens had sufficient opportunity for input and were made fully aware that the county's original reduction offer, which will expire, was made in 2008 for the purpose of stimulating the local economy during a time of recession, and that the extension of this offer confers on Eagle Landing the distinction of being the only recipient of this offer. Would this same reduction offer have been made in today's improved economic climate? We also ask whether citizens were made fully aware that the proposal includes not only TSDC, but the transfer of $2.4 million worth of county-owned property, and the extent to which this agreement will financially benefit Veritas and the New Hope Community Church. Following recent media articles, the League has concerns that the public will perceive this project as a taxpayer giveaway for a favored high-end development. We believe that the Commission may have had excellent reasons for this resolution, but perception is key. And we urge the Board of Commissioners, in the interest of maintaining community trust, to provide a more thorough explanation to the public of the rationale, fiscal implications, and taxpayer benefits of the Eagle Landing Agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. Well,
Go ahead.
before Commissioner Smith, I vote against this. And, you know, it was huddled in executive session until finally I said it's time to come out and tell the public this. I've said this before, but when a development like this goes in, I guarantee you that the lenders involved demand that the builder, the developer, has a 10% contingency minimum. And now what we're talking about is the investment of Clackamas County as a total of 2% of the entire development costs. And so you go, 2% sounds really small, but it's almost $10 million. It is no doubt in my mind that they had the wherewithal to make it, even with that 2% not given to them. Nobody can convince me that this development, nobody told me that this development could not happen without Clackamas County's public funds going to them. I said it last week when we voted on this, and I'll say it again. This is simply lining the developer's pocket. If this development would not have happened without our 2%, perhaps it shouldn't have happened. It was voted on, ladies and gentlemen, and right now, as Commissioner Savas said, subject to the developer reaching some milestones, including an April 15th submittal of the master plan, he will get not only the Stevens Orchard Apartments, $2.4 million, but the $2.4 million he has deposited in escrow to purchase that property, so he'll get a double whammy. My biggest concern is, now, by the way, the $7 million was half Happy Valley's money and half ours, but it's all system development. And you could ask yourself, if I didn't have that $7 million, or in our case 3.5, where does it come from? Well, that's a problem. It comes from everybody else, and projects aren't done because of that. As Nancy said, anybody who travels this area right now knows it's a huge problem. And we're going to add 2.1 million square feet in that area. It's going to be a tough road to hoe, I think. Commissioner Smith.
Well, Mr. Chair, you weren't the only one that asked for transparency on this, and I'm going to have Mr. Magcor address that in a minute. Yes, I too wanted to bring this to prime time sooner than it was, but I was told that negotiations of this type must remain in executive session. Is that right, Mr. Magcor?
It's not mandatory, Commissioner, that they maintain and remain in executive session, but it certainly is an authorized use of the executive session is real property discussions, as well as pending litigation, as well as candid conversations with your attorneys.
I'm not finished. And I want to correct the chair on something. He mentioned the word all SDCs, and I want to be very clear on this. This SDC amount is an SDC that the price was frozen from the 1996 levels, which means it's much lower, and it's for transportation SDCs only. It's only for a portion of the transportation SDCs. Many more dollars in transportation SDCs will be paid by the developer for this, as well as park SDCs, as well as sewer and water SDCs. An evaluation is going to be made by our staff, what requirements on the systems that will be, and I assume that the builder is going to be charged for those. Now, we can't know what those fees are going to be until a plan is submitted that says we're going to have this many people, or this much housing, or this much use, and even the traffic study that Nancy cites in her letter is a little bit disingenuous, because that traffic study was done in 2011 for a different purpose. So you can't have a traffic study. We just can't. We want to do a traffic study for the Stafford Triangle. Well, we don't know what to study in a traffic study until we have a proposed development that says this many cars are going to go through the area on a certain day. Now, as you know, there have been large traffic improvements in this area off Stevens Road, Monterey, and all of those. That was done from an urban renewal district before our time on the board. That was done in anticipation that the area would be developed. It wasn't done just so the residents could have free, open driving and a clear road whenever they choose to travel. It was done in anticipation that this area would grow. So as you become before us, and you're very fond of spouting information that may not be totally accurate, we have yet to get into the process. Now, as far as being open on this, the Stevens Orchard apartment complex at $2.4 million is in exchange for a road to be built by the developer. If Clackamas County had to build that road, it would cost us more. You know why? Because we don't own the land. We would have to buy the land and pave it. So I consider that very little. As far as the development, would this have gone to another county? I have been told most assuredly that the major retailer, a national retailer who will be the anchor of this development, asked for that because he was being courted by Washington County and Multnomah County, who is more than willing to pay much more money than Clackamas County ever did to have this. Now, the commissioners came up with a strategic plan called Performance Clackamas. And in that strategic plan is a goal to help businesses create 10,000 new jobs by the year 2019. And I've often asked my commissioners, how are we going to do that? When I think it's generally accepted by most of the people in this room that government has not been our friend, and that government has come in place of prosperity because it's harder to get building permits, it's harder for businesses to wade through regulation and everything else. This was an opportunity that I think is good for Clackamas County. I think it's uniquely situated next to I-5, and this area has been looked at for development for quite some time. We are not taking up foundation farmland. We are not taking up huge recreation areas, and I think that that should be applauded as well.
Commissioner Savas.
Well, thank you, Marge, for bringing this forward. I think your words were well crafted, and just a couple corrections, however, or one in particular, that as far as the county's money, that's somewhat true, but this is the urban renewal district money, so it's owned by the taxing district. So that $2.4 million Eastern Ridge, our goal is to close. Our promise was to close. We passed a resolution to close and terminate the district. So liquidating that property would be necessary. We acquired that because of building a road, and I think Commissioner Smith is relatively accurate in that there are road improvements that will have to be made. There will be a property acquisition that have to be made, and my own personal guess is that Stevens or the traffic circle on Stevens will have to be expanded, and there'll be more property be needed for right-of-way. So I think the goal is to have the developer build that, which will be cheaper than the county to build it, ideally.
Can I make a comment?
I do agree that with you that there should have been perhaps more information. I do agree that the day we held this, that it should have been, public comment should have been available for that. It should have been a discussion item, but that's an agenda setting issue. Contrary to the chair's comments that particular day, we have to submit our request for anything on the agenda about a week in advance. And not knowing, seeing the agenda after it comes out beyond the deadline, that it had no comment, and I only learned about it the day before that it was withdrawn anyhow, but it was, I was just not aware. I was actually shocked that it was not for public comment. But I agree that some of the numbers should be out there, and at least if the math that I was given by our staff months ago indicated to me that the return on investment for the taxpayers of Clackamas County and the taxing districts would be at the minimum build-out of only 560,000 square feet of taxable property would be approximately $1.7 million annually to the taxing districts for a $2.4 million property and some relief, again, of which they'll build some roads. So if I do the math correctly, within a few years, we're not only whole, but we'll have an income stream. So I think the taxpayers will benefit. Had it really been anything, if it had been a giveaway, I wouldn't have voted for it. If it was actually a true giveaway with no return on investment, without the numbers here, I never would have supported it. So I do agree that perception, that's the word you use the word perception. That's hard, that's part of the responsibility, that's part of the heat we take as, I think, as elected officials sometimes, is that we have to message correctly, and that's a choice that the board and the county has to make as far as messaging. I think we can do a better job. I agree completely.
March, did you want to say something quickly?
I just wanted to echo that it's not so much the facts, because I agree that it's what is put out in the newspapers and it's the public perception, and that is what I was trying to stress.
When do you believe what the newspaper said? By the way, I want to interject something. That Oregonian article was 100% wrong.
Well, I'm not disputing that. I was just saying that this is what the public is reading, and so this is what they're going to perceive. And so it is incumbent on you to correct those misperceptions.
You've got some more coming. Commissioner Schrader, got your button on? You got your button on?
One of the things I wanted to let folks know here, as we do economic development projects of this sort in this county, we look at various clusters of the kinds of businesses that are here and the kinds of activities that will give good paying jobs to citizens. In that area, you also know you have that large Kaiser hospital piece. They're one of the biggest Northwest hospital systems, and their regional offices are there. They're well known for their expertise in heart issues, for example. One of the things we identified in this county was the fact that hospital systems, of which we have Legacy, Kaiser, Providence, actually provide people with good, high-wage jobs, physicians, nurses, medical technicians, administration, and all the infrastructure that you have for health and wellness centers. One of the reasons why we looked at the Eagles Landing property is also, we hope, an opportunity to expand that medical economic development cluster there for job creation in the county. And I want to thank Commissioner Savas and Commissioner Smith particularly for talking about the larger return on investment. And I do want to remind folks that if the developer cannot meet certain thresholds, this kind of transaction does not happen, because as public officials, we have to make sure that a decision of return on investment is actually going to, we hope, create the kinds of jobs that we need in this county for our citizens. And I'm not asking folks to agree or disagree. I just think it's important for you to understand that we weren't making this decision in a vacuum, but if part of our Performance Clackamas is job creation, that's one of the things that we're trying to address here in the county, because we have a dearth of, frankly, jobs here. We have a dearth of employment land, and we're really trying to make sure that our citizens have a place to work and be prosperous. So that, from my perspective, again, is one of the drivers when we made this kind of a decision. Eagles Landing, just for institutional memory for everyone here, has always been controversial. I think, Mira, you were here when a previous commission a number of years ago also dealt with the development that is there now, which now includes a golf course and a park and, housing in the area. There was no reason for me to think that even a recent decision would be any less controversial than those decisions that were made about, am I correct, about 20 years ago, I think? Yeah, about that. So it's the price of public service, and we do the best we can. I do have a question for Mr. Madcore, though. So, because I worry that we have been using executive sessions much more frequently than I ever recall as a commissioner in my previous role. And I'm trying to get my arms around, when you said we are not required to have an executive, could you explain that one more time to me when you talked about what is appropriate for executive sessions and what isn't? Because
Sure.
we may just be having a lot of transactions, but I never recall I really don't recall this is my past experience as a commissioner here.
Let me try this in a nutshell, commissioners. The Oregon Public Meetings Law has as an overarching threshold is that government work is to be done in the open, transparently, with the ability of the citizens to observe their government making decisions. All decisions have to be made publicly. There are exceptions. One of those exceptions is the ability to hold an executive session where deliberations are made, but no final decision is made. The final decision is made, like this one was last week, in a public session that's noticed and advertised. A basis for the executive session is pending or potential litigation, labor negotiations, evaluations of public officers, real estate negotiations, dealing with matters where you are talking about privileged documents such as attorney-client communications and things along those lines as well. So there's a statutorily specified list of bases for an executive session. This particular one fell under a host of them. It was attorney-client communication. It was real estate negotiations because of the Stevens Orchard Department. It was also potential litigation because they had been threatening litigation because of the expiration of their system development charges previously. So that was the basis. If this board decided to, as it often can, to go public with it, let's have this conversation in public, they certainly can do that as well. So there's no requirement. It usually is at the direction of council, though, that we do advise that certain matters be done in an executive session. So that is the basis for it. Does that help clarify things?
That does help, but I guess, again, I would like to make clear that perhaps I have worried about executive session, the number of executive sessions that we've had. I personally think that this particular issue seemed appropriate given what you have outlined as an executive session. It seems to me we could have done a better job having that as a discussion item for the public to really come before us, but it didn't happen that way. But I'm glad we're having the conversation now.
Let me straighten out a couple things that were said. One, the road extension through the New Hope Church. If the development was less than 750,000 square feet, we were responsible for it. In no way are we responsible for it now because it's now 2.1 million square feet. So for it to be said to you, it's saving us road costs, they're required to do that. At least we didn't throw that money at it too. Secondarily, a public discussion, is that not what we're having right here at 3 minutes increments? And I know we've gone a little long here. But public discussion is nothing more than people getting an opportunity to talk about something for 3 minutes. In consultation with Mary Rathke, our clerk, I decided, why have it a public discussion? All the friends of Eagle Landing are going to show up anyway, which they did. And you know how much time they got? 3 minutes, the same as what public input would be. Nobody was turned away because it wasn't a public discussion. They simply gave their 3 minutes under public testimony, and we went on with our business. I am saddened, you're right, that there wasn't more advertisement, more time. This thing came screaming out of executive session. Everybody's in a big hurry because the developer has an April 15th deadline, and that was fair, I guess. But now more people are here talking against this than the friends of Eagle Landing that showed that day to talk for it. And they talked 3 minutes, the same amount they would have gotten under a public discussion. So for somebody to be shocked that it was changed is really, the subject is moot. People got 3 minutes, and that's what they get, and what they should get. Unfortunately, you probably all didn't notice what was coming down, even though it was advertised, as Mr. Madcore said, even though the Oregonian wrote a little bit of piece about it, but not very much. I'm sorry you didn't get more say in it, and right now, we, by the commission vote, are locked into an agreement. That agreement, again, has certain standards, which they will try to meet, and we'll see if this thing goes forward or not. Commissioner Savas.
So, yeah, I will say, I think it was Ms. Hall that actually raised the issue about not speaking. It was, that's how I learned of it. So, one thing I do want to add was that as far as do they need it, would this development happen or not happen, we'll never know, right? Because we've taken the step we have. But we do know that we've lost, one company I can speak about that we have lost, it was a company called Organically Grown. Granted, the property they were looking at, they made us an offer, which I think was not in the best interest of the citizens of the county. So we didn't provide them the option that they were looking for and the opportunity they were looking for. It was just too much. On the other hand, part of the reason that we really couldn't keep them is we really didn't have a more practical piece of property, industrial property, to actually land them. So had we had an inventory, a reasonable inventory that was accessible, I think we could have found something in their price range. But because of the only piece of land we had to give them that they were looking at was too expensive for them to develop, their ask was a little bit higher, which we turned down. There's an example of turning one down. Cabela's. Here it is years later, and there's still people that are complaining in Clackamas County, business people, citizens saying, we lost Cabela's. Why? Why did that happen? And there's an example, a great example of, well, or it was more in Oregon City's hands. It wasn't in the county commission's control, but it was more Oregon City. But there's an example of that. Yes, I guess it'll reach a point where if it didn't work out, building on a site that was constrained with regard to as a landfill, took some extra expense. They were looking for some help on that. They ended up moving to Tualatin, Washington County. We lost them. So there are examples where, number one, they didn't pencil out for us. Number one, and number two, it didn't pencil out for them, which is Cabela's, and we lost them. So I think that we got to remember that there's a developer, and there are the future businesses that will actually take hold and take lease or buy the property that the developer's going to develop. And those are the businesses that I'm rather appeal to or look forward. Personally, I'm not really big on a whole lot more commercial or a whole lot more housing. I think we have a lot of that in Clackamas County. And if it was industrial, I'd be a lot more excited about this. It's not the place to put industrial, but by all means, I would be far more excited about that. So I'm not, terribly excited, but, I was elected to find and do what's in the best interest of the citizens of Clackamas County. And the other point you made, Marge, I think that was really, I'm very passionate about is transparency. So that resonates with me quite well. Thank you.
Thank you, Marge. Thank you, Nancy. All right. The next two are Jim Wessenberg and Mac Woods.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you very much for giving us a chance to come and talk for just a little bit. First time I've been here. My involvement, I'm here speaking in regards to the Eagle Landing project, as we've already been discussing. And my exposure to this has primarily been from afar, reading the news, seeing what was planned potentially. I went to my first community meeting last Saturday, made a decision to come and just voice some thoughts. I am not opposed to progress or development at all. I live in a house that butts up to the golf course, what's left of it now, that was built 10 years ago, so I've taken advantage of the new development, and I'm quite pleased there. So my concerns kind of fall in a couple of categories, and if I'm speaking out of erroneous information, please feel free to correct me. Number one is, as already been stated, the traffic, and I'm looking forward to the final proposal from the developer, I think due on April 15th, which I assume that traffic conditions will be addressed, and I trust that we'll have the opportunity to speak again publicly about that final proposal. The second thing that really concerns me is part of the article that was in the Argonian, and it is not my desire or appearance to desire that I want to bash churches, but the relationship between the developer and the church and the involvement of county tax money is of a concern. Specifically, comments that were made by someone associated with the church that they receive or retain the right to refuse what businesses can and cannot be developed in this new plan. Now, it's not my job to say what's right or wrong or this. You folks are hired to do your job, and I want to respect that. But and I'm a church attender, have been my whole life. But every time I hear someone in a church talk about a vision from God and it involves commercial property, it's turned into a disaster every single time. So my concern is how much sway do these folks really have in saying what goes in there? Well, I guess we'll find out. I'm just expressing my concern. The last thing that I would say is of great concern to me is prior comments that were made in reference to low-income housing in the county. And we're wiping out an apartment complex where lower-income folk live.
No.
Okay, so if that can be addressed, that resolves one.
Yeah, we got some people who want to answer you already.
They sounded like they wanted to jump in and steal my time.
That's exactly right.
So again, just to summarize, I'm not opposed to this development. I've taken advantage of it already. I'm very concerned about how big it's going to be and what could end up being a disaster with empty real estate that does not bring in any taxes.
All right, here we go. Commissioner Smith.
You said the developer will submit his plans by April 15th and address the traffic concerns.
That's what I thought. Am I wrong?
No. He will not address the traffic concerns until we have a study and they are evaluated by staff.
Okay.
Because he may have his traffic study, but the county needs to look at them and then evaluate them. The only thing the developer's doing at this point is submitting his plan. And you know what? It could get turned down. Or he may not agree with the county, with what the county tells him that needs to be done. So this is very far from a done deal. Secondly, the apartment buildings are not low income. They never have been low income. Those are market rate apartments. And you could ask yourself, why is the county in the business of owning market rate apartments? Doesn't that clash with competing with private industry? We pay $24,000 worth of property taxes on that, on an aging structure. We will get a considerably more millions of dollars in real estate taxes paid on that. Now, I mentioned to a lady that the Oregonian article was not correct, and I would really like to put that at rest. I do not believe the church will have veto power over any developer coming in. As a matter of fact, the church is not developing this property. It is Veritas. It's a private company. Based on the financing they got from the open market, based on the tenants that are coming into this place, they would probably not agree to being approved or disapproved by a church. This board would have never approved this had the church had veto power.
So
That was a piece of information. Sir, let me
power?
finish. Please let me finish. Now, this is really complicated. The reporter got some information that came from 2012. 3 of us commissioners weren't even on the board yet. It was a statement made by Pastor Ray Cotton. That has nothing to do with anything in this development, that the church does not have veto power, nor will they have veto power. That was erroneous based on bad information, and I will say irresponsibility of the Oregonian reporter. Neil Nedaleski himself has said, no, the church does not have veto power. Now, when a developer develops a piece of property like this, They have certain economic goals that must be met, or it's not going to pencil out. They're not going to make any money. So those people, those entities going into it will be good retailers in order to make business. So I think that's erroneous, and I think I would like you to dispel that. Just because the newspaper says something without contacting commissioners or asking them before they report it is very irresponsible, and it does no good for our citizens who read the newspaper.
Sir, you want to make a comment? Go ahead.
I just wanted to make certain I was understanding the commissioner correctly, is that the church will not have any veto
Now,
power.
understand this. There's the old phraseology that's trust but verify.
There you go.
We have not seen a darn thing that proves they have veto power or they don't have veto power. We have taken the word of the developer, or some people have taken the word of the developer, and that's where it stands currently. Second of all, you should note that, again, it was April 15th, they put in their master plan, and you got to believe then the staff starts tearing it apart. And the staff will have certain recommendations as that comes forward. They know that they've got to do a traffic study that probably adheres to what the staff wants them to study, and I encourage everybody here, please communicate with Mike McAllister at our planning department to keep track of what's happening over there, because there will be public hearings on this, okay? Understand this also, it will not come before our body. The hearings officer makes all decisions, and believe me, they are influenced by people that come before them and say, wait just a minute, we have a question. And the hearings officer is affected by that, and our staff is as well, as they come forward with their recommendations. But this process is going to take a while. I believe, Mr. Madcore, is it 180 days we have to answer this? Is that the exact time? Or is it 120? I can't remember.
I can't recall precisely, Chair.
It's in the neighborhood of 3, 4, 5 months that they have, that we have in order to respond to their application. So at some point in time, we can elongate that, especially if they don't submit that which we required in a timely manner. So do pay attention to public notices on this. You can get on an email blast from our planning department so that you can keep track incrementally as the process of this development goes forward. Commissioner Savas.
So I do want to say that, as I recall, the article said that the news reporter tried to reach out to the church owner or Mr. Nalaleski and did not get a return call. And so she wrote the article accordingly. So that's my recollection of what the article said. I could be wrong about that. But I do recall Commissioner Bernard, who's not here tonight, said that over the weekend or recently he reached out to the developer, and the developer told him basically what Commissioner Smith had said. So we got the sense that it's not the church, and the veto power, he said, is not applicable to this, and the church is not involved. It's the developer itself. Now that's secondhand. But I think from Commissioner Bernard expressed that, so we will verify.
Okay. And thank you very much. I think we ought to note that this developer has been here before, winky winky, and received that golf course that he built up there. Now, that's on property he doesn't own. You see, the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District owns that property, and we lease it to him for 40 years for $1 a year. So he's been to the trough before at Clackamas County, and here he is again, and we're helping developers. There's an interesting study. It's called by True North by DHM. It was a comprehensive poll throughout the state of Oregon about people's feelings about giving money away to developers, incentives they call it. Only 34% of the populace of Oregon agrees with that. That means 2/3 didn't, and I believe that's reflective of the thoughts in Clackamas County. Thank you for coming before us today. And last and certainly, I forgot Mr. Woods. I didn't mean to do that, sir.
That's okay. I forget your name all the time intentionally.
Yeah.
Chair Ludlow and other commissioners, we had a pretty good talk from Mr. Vroman. There's a big concern out here with each and every property owner and about how much taxes they pay. And I believe it's come to my attention and my attention is worth just what you pay for it, nothing. However, we have a management problem. And I hear about the money that the developer is putting up. Is that going to be hard greenback dollars, or is that going to be some kind of phonied up note? And is he going to lose that money if he can't perform? You and I know the real estate rules, Mr. Ludlow, and I would like to set in on some of those negotiations and give him a little bit of truth serum and hold him accountable. And if you guys are the manager, you're the voters, you're the managers, there needs to be some authenticity put out on how you vote and represent us. I'm just one of us, every one of us here is taxpayers, and get them straightened out. I recall when they were building that bike path alongside the 205 going out. They spent mega bucks on that. How long has it been since you've seen a rider on that bike path? They come down here and ride in the country, out where I live, gangs of them, to the point they don't even have room to ride, but they got a bunch of crazy rules that says, dare you to hit me because I'm going to sue you. And they're so thick sometimes on Sunday morning you can't even get to church. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Now, there's some management problems going on, and the county, you that's representing the public, need to represent the public. We need help. We need your attention. That's what you're here for. We're counting on you, each and every one of you, to represent us. And then you look at, remember John Charles, Cascade Policy, the study, he spent a lot of his own money to prove what a waste Tri-Med is. You got these buses running one in front of another a lot of times. How many riders on them? They're empty. They're paying that driver. They're paying the fuel, the maintenance, upkeep on them buses. It's a dying horse, according to the John Charles Cascade Policies report. And the taxpayers see this. They see that somebody has made some wrong decisions. It's about time for us to make some right decisions. We're counting on you to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Savas.
Just want to say, Mac, your first two questions is are they going to pay cash? Yes, they will pay cash. And if they
The
don't.
state or the developer?
Developer will pay the cash. It'll be
Okay.
put in escrow, it will be cash, or he doesn't get the deed. And number two, he doesn't get, those monies are held on until he performs. He doesn't perform, doesn't see a penny.
So we get it back if he don't perform. That's what the rules are. Mr.
Right.
Ludlow, you know the real estate law as well as I do. And if they mess up, they lose it. They walk away with zip.
I think the figure is, I can be correct on this, but I think it's, Paul, is it 650,000 square feet of taxable square feet on that agreement?
It's 560 minimum
Yeah.
taxable square
Minimum.
feet that they've got to build.
560,000 square feet of taxable.
You're getting off subject.
No, this has to do this.
About the money the developer is putting up out of his
That's
pocket.
what I'm talking about.
Okay,
Let me
go ahead.
finish. The developer puts $2.4 million into an escrowed account.
Okay.
He gets the deed to Stevens Orchard Apartments.
Yes,
It's over
sir.
them. However, that $2.4 million that's sitting there, he will get it all back if he puts up 560,000 square feet within a prescribed period of time. He gets not only the apartments, but he gets the money he paid for the apartments. So he gets it all. So we don't get anything unless he fails to perform within the prescribed period of time.
And if he fails, then we, the county, benefit to get to keep his money, correct? Yes or no?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm done.
Commissioner Savas.
And whether it's occupied or not, 560,000 square feet of taxable property generates $1.7 million annually to the taxing districts. Occupied or not.
And that's taxing.
That's an estimated taxable to the taxing districts. That's what it generates.
Thank you.
To the taxing districts. That's not, Clackamas County might add, Mr. Vroman, he seems to be in the big bucks because he collects all the money, but he gives it out to a ton of districts. Clackamas County themselves are not the huge beneficiaries. It's our schools, it's fire, it's police, it's libraries, it's parks. It's all the special taxing districts that get that money. It doesn't go back into our coffers. Commissioner Savas?
It doesn't go back to our coffers because it's owned by the taxing districts. The urban renewal district is owned by the taxing districts. It goes right back to the people who own it. The taxing districts, that's where the money was derived from. They get it back. That's why it doesn't get back to the county. The county gets its cut because it's one of the taxing districts, but it's owned, the urban renewal property is generated by the taxing districts, and essentially that money is taxing district money. It is not county money.
As taxes go up, we don't get it back. I've never known a taxpayer
You get
yet
it,
to
you get,
back.
we'll get back 1.7 million to the taxing
Who's
district. With taxing districts.
There's a ton of them. There's a ton of them.
Big difference between we.
The county
and
gets, the county share is 200, is estimated to be 248,000 at the minimum build. I personally, I think that if this goes forward, I expect the first phase to be built. I'll be pretty surprised if the actual 2.1 million square feet actually gets built. That's my personal opinion, because I think the area can only take so much, the market can only take so much. So my guess is if this project doesn't move forward, I have confidence that the 560,000 square feet will be built. But past that, I'm not so sure.
At $250,000 a year, it's pretty easy to figure out when we get our 10 million back, wouldn't it be? Huh? We're talking about a lot of years before we ever see the 10 million come back to us in any way, shape, or form.
In response to your personal opinion, Mr. Savis, it's kind of like my personal opinion. It's worth just what nobody pays for. It don't count. What counts is how you represent the taxpayers. Our taxes that go up, 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 up each year, except for the veterans that politicians like to talk about at election time. And other than that, they don't, as they no longer get diddly by being service-connected disability with 40% or more. So why don't somebody do something about that for the veterans instead of talking big talk? I'm done.
Oh,
Thank you.
Mac, every time you come, you're dissing on us for not doing enough for the vet. No, you're
See
done.
a commissioner,
Mac,
well,
you're done.
then why did you
Dude, you're
comment?
done. Mac, you're
I was
done.
before you
Not
opened up.
really. It just goes on and on.
Why don't you respect the public like we respect you?
I
Thank you.
think I give the respect to all the public, Mac, but every,
seem like
but
that.
you,
I've heard
you just
people
keep
talk about
going
that.
when I've asked you to stop, though, Mac.
I got those DVDs that can prove it.
Thank you, sir. Every week or so, Mac comes in and tells us we're not doing enough for veterans. I'm very proud of what this county does for their veterans. We're one of the few Veterans Department that has 3 veteran service officers. The VASH vouchers that were explained earlier, fantastic that we have VASH vouchers to help out our veterans. We put forward and hired 2 people to do a homeless veterans count last year. We do a great deal for our veterans, and I'm proud of that. And I'm sorry some people are not accepting of the fact that we do a lot for our veterans. I know Martha Schrader talks on veterans issues all the time, testifies about them, is in support of them, and has worked very hard on veterans issues. So I appreciate Mac all the time coming in. We're not saying we're not doing enough. I don't think you can do enough for veterans, and I'm serious about that. Man, Mac, you can't continue to do that, dude. Thank you. Well, I'll continue mouth on because I have the floor, Mac, and that you've got to stop. I'm asking you nicely. So anyway, we'll go on with further business now that we have one more person yet to testify. He's not a stranger here. In fact, he's a regular here, Mr. Les Poole.
Does that mean I have to apologize for not being here last week?
I missed you.
Yep, I know you look forward to seeing me. Commissioner Bernard was in Salem when I was there today, and Dan Chandler was there. And I was there on the Damascus issue. I own property there. It's a real mess. But owning property in Damascus isn't why I'm here tonight, because that would take hours that we don't have. I am here tonight to tell you that I still don't have an answer as to how we're possibly going to fix our roads, but our good friends at Metro, of course, have proposed a new regional funding for transportation. Now, I don't know why it's not in the Oregonian or why it's as far back in the Tribune as it is, but obviously, government in general has a spending problem. I think the county is certainly doing better than what I'm seeing in Salem. You're certainly being a lot more responsible than well, I could think of a lot of words, but let's just say goofy things that they're doing in Portland. We're working on a budget right now. You've got a budget coming. The budget committee's going to be working on it. I, as a citizen, would love to see the preliminary numbers on the website. Maybe they're there. I did take a look at the website recently, and there's information about the road situation. And one of the things that is ultimately going to happen is we're going to see a road maintenance fee proposed of some nature here in the county, and the citizens will get to vote on it. One of the reasons that things are so sideways in Portland, and one of the reasons that people like me showed up here, is that nobody was getting to vote on tremendous debt that was being imposed on us. I don't know what my percent of the 18 trillion national debt is, but I'm sure I can borrow it. I'd like to comment about what Mr. Vroman shared with us. I tell you, every year he shows up, and in 10 minutes, he can teach you a lot. The slides and things are really informative. Maybe his calling should have been a school teacher, because seriously, the guy comes up here and he has a way of presenting some complex things in a manner that people can digest and look at. And it's great to see the numbers are going up instead of down, revenue's up. But at the same time, I maintain that the stock market's overvalued. I think that there's a lot of people that can't afford rent. I think rents are rising for a lot of reasons. And one of them, of course, is the urban growth boundary, which again goes back to Metro, our favorite subject lately. I'd like to just take a few seconds and just make a comment about something that occurred about a month ago. A real close friend of mine slipped and fell in the middle of the night and was injured, called 911, and AMR came out in the middle of the night and it did a fantastic job of keeping this person calm, very carefully loading her into the ambulance and getting her to the hospital in a very timely fashion. I recall all of the issues with the contract for emergency services that was debated, a lot of politicking, a lot of confusion and angst and legal cost and threats of lawsuit. But in the end, we ended up with a company that's best qualified to take care of folks in an emergency. And I do want to thank AMR for the job they're doing. And I appreciate your time as always.
Thank you, Les. All right, ladies and, Commissioner Savage.
Chair, I just wanted to say, before Ms. Easley and others leave, I just want to thank them for coming and bringing that to our attention. I think it's, perception is extremely important, and it's very difficult to us, frankly, sometimes to try to be up here and answer the questions and provide as many facts as possible when one of us, specifically the chair, seems to not wish to share things accurately. I think that's been problematic for us. I'm sure he'll rebut and retort to my comments, but on this particular matter especially, it's very, very difficult for us to try and give the facts and again, repeat that we're going to give away $10 million and get nothing back. That's an oversimplification, and it's just not in the best interest of the citizens of Clackamas County. It destroys the perception. It's just a distortion, and it's very, very sad that we're faced with that. And this is simply not the first case. This is not the only one, and unfortunately, it'll probably continue.
Oh, wow. I'm supposed to be quiet on this one, right?
I expect you to retort.
Oh, well, you say I'm distorting, that certainly sounds like I'm a liar. I will stand by everything I said, ladies and gentlemen. At the first build-out, $250,000 divided into a million, that's 4 years. Multiply that by 10 for 10 years, that's 40 years before we get this money back.
Not true.
Okay.
Thank you, Miss. Exactly. It's already district.
Do I have the floor, or do you again, Commissioner Savage? Turn on your light. We'll give you another retort at me. Commissioner Savage is really bent on running against me for chair, so look for that. And I'm telling you, I'm running again for a whole bunch of reasons, and you can see some of them here tonight. Thank you, Commissioner Savage.
As we said, Chair. So which are you referring to? Are you referring to the $2.4 million that is urban renewal district money or county money? Which county money are you referring to?
Well, urban renewal money, ladies and gentlemen, is taken away from taxing districts like schools, parks, et cetera. So you say, whose money is it? Well, if we returned it, it should go back to schools, parks, fire, et cetera, right? But instead of returning that, in the case of the Stephen Orchard's apartment, we gave it away. Does that make us feel better? No. Now, again, the figure that was given me is $250,000 after the first stage of build-out. Okay, we get $250,000, but we gave away $10 million. Seems like an easy calculation to me.
Well, so the 2.4 million was derived from the special districts, the taxing districts particularly. The money, that's where the money is derived from. And so we, however we dispose the property, in return, under this particular plan here, under the minimum build-out, the taxing districts receive back 1.7 million per year. So if I did my math just on that, in 2 years, we are, what, 3.4? We're 1 million ahead in 2 years, based on that minimum build-out. In just 2 years, we're just on the 2.4 million. And if the developer actually does do the road improvements that are there, which offsets the transportation system development charges, which divided in half of 7 million is 3.5 million, and he makes all those road improvements, which is part of the assessment. Again, transportation SDCs, they build the roads in lieu of. How is that, where's the giveaway?
Well, I don't need to go over and over again that we had $10 million and now we don't. It seems like an easy equation to me. So we can throw a bunch of numbers at you, and some of them will even stick to the wall. But the point of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, we had $10 million and now it's gone. You know, this was the same argument they used about Clackamas Town Center, where they took hundreds of millions of dollars away from our schools, police, fire, libraries. And here's what the previous commission did with that money. They also gave it away. Now, you talk about Washington Square, how many times they've remodeled that area? A ton. How about Bridgeport? They never got any public subsidies. Washington Square, last time they remodeled, they never got any public subsidies. But this county threw $22 million at Clackamas Town Center to help them remodel it. This county threw $25 million at the Green Line. Hundreds of millions of dollars. And that isn't free money. That money was taken from, let me repeat them, schools, police, fire, library. When we tried to dispose of the surplus money out of that district, our fire chief came and said, please, we need that money back. Our sheriff came and said, please, we need that money back. So don't believe for a minute this is free money. It was taken away from our very important taxing districts, and we've given another $2.4 million away that we could have taken care of roads or just sent the money back to those same taxing districts. I love debating this. Oh, Commissioner Savas.
Well, I just want to say the quote there. We have $10 million, and now it's gone. It is gone. So I mean, we haven't given away anything, and we don't have $10 million. We're not handing anyone $10 million. So so that's not worth really debating. But the Bridgeport thing, for example. Now you've been saying that for quite a few years now about they didn't pay a penny. Not true. The county and the city jointly worked to build an intersection. Approximately that cost was $6 million to build some intersection improvements in that area. The county sold approximately 28 acres at 50 cents on the dollar to the tune of an $18 million benefit. If you add the development people in Tualatin and Washington County that I talked to said that the total benefit was approximately $24 to $25 million of a subsidy to build the Bridgeport Mall. Well, so that's the information that I got by actually doing my homework.
Well, that's what SDCs do, folks. They got a ton of SDCs from Bridgeport, and they put it right back into the area, and that's the way it should be. Well, now it's time for the most exciting part of our agenda, and that is consent agenda. I'll ask the clerk to read the consent agenda by title.
Okay, the consent agenda. Under Health, Housing, and Human Services, we have approval of a Revenue Intergovernmental Agreement with Multnomah County to create a work group to identify needs and information specific to county school-based health centers in coordination with the School-Based Health Center Alternative Payment Initiative Project. A board order approving the mental health director's designee to authorize custody hold under ORS 426-233. Under the Department of Transportation and Development, approval of an intergovernmental agreement for TMG Grant Agreement number 30522 with Oregon Department of Transportation to develop a Monroe Neighborhood Street Design Plan. Under elected officials, approval of previous business meeting minutes. Under the Public and Government Affairs Office, a board order approving an extension of the cable television franchise with Comcast of Oregon 2, Inc., Comcast of Tualatin Valley, Inc., and Comcast of Illinois, Ohio, and Oregon, LLC. And under our development agency, we have approval of a contract with Oregon Underground, Inc. for the 70th Avenue Improvement Project, and that concludes the consent agenda.
All right, any commissioners want to pull any of those items? All right, I'll ask for a motion.
I move we approve the consent.
Got to push the button.
Oh, sorry. I keep this off because I'm still have a little bit of a cough, everybody. So I move we approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second? All right, motion made by Commissioner Schrader, seconded by Commissioner Savas. Further discussion? Mary, the poll.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
Commissioner Savas?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
And Chair Ledlow.
Aye, passes 4-0. You notice, Don, everybody stuck around here tonight to hear that thing we always wait for that's so important to these meetings, your report.
I am very pleased to share my report. One of the things that I was going to do tonight, but I'll defer to next week, is to talk about the budget calendar and talk about ways that the public can be informed and involved in the budget development process as we get started with that in this coming year. I'll reserve that presentation to next week. But I do have a couple of quick information items to share with you. One is that this past Saturday, we had the first ever Clackamas County Dental Fair that took place at both the Beaver Creek and the Sunnyside Health Centers. We had a total of 122 people receive a variety of treatments, and there are dozens who are scheduled to be able to return for additional work. The Clackamas County Health Centers Director, Deborah Cockrell, expressed that this event really showed our services in a really good way, and I would agree with her about that. So, then the other thing I wanted to share in the way of good news is that we received some very positive feedback from a brand new county resident about the stellar work of two county employees, Dawn Hickson and Rick Winterhalter from the Department of Transportation and Development. The resident, Mr. Jeff Von Allman, relayed to us that Dawn assisted with some street signing issues, and then Rick helped out with a service problem that Mr. Allman was working with. Mr. Allman wrote, "Both these employees showed concern for my issues and surprised me with their follow-ups. Having recently moved into Clackamas County from a neighboring county, I was pleasantly surprised to find county employees that exhibit such exceptional customer service." So I want to thank Dawn and Rick both for their excellent work, and I also want to thank Mr. Van Allman for sharing his sentiments with us, and also for moving to Clackamas County, which, as we know, is a great place to live, work, and play. And I have one other item I wanted to share with you. I received from Lorraine Gonzalez of our planning department a publication. This is an international publication. It's put out by the International Society of City and Regional Planners, and this is shown worldwide. And there is a feature article in here that features our own Willamette Falls, rediscovering the falls, and it talks about the legacy project that's out there. It's a really wonderful article that exposes one of our greatest treasures all over the world. So wanted to share that with you.
Thank you, Don. And it's time for Commissioners' communication. Commissioner Savas.
I'll keep it short tonight, and I'll just pass.
All right, Commissioner Schrader.
Well, thank you, Chair. I just want to let folks know that on Monday I was able to attend our Workforce Investment Council of Clackamas County Board Retreat. I serve on that board, and it is a mandated coalition from the federal and state government that actually has 60% of the folks need to be private sector business and industry people. We also have folks from our Human Services Department on the board, as well as representatives of labor and apprenticeship programs. And the mission of the board is to help build job creation here in Clackamas County by finding out what businesses need, what kind of employees they need, and how we can help skill and educate people up to a point where they are able to be employed in the county with our various businesses. And we actually worked on our strategic plan for the year. Also, Chair Ledlow and I got to speak at the Cultural Heritage Summit at the Pacific Crest Ballroom, and that was a coalition of folks who are interested in historic preservation, heritage, as well as Don just mentioned, a number of folks who are very interested in the Willamette Falls locks, excuse me, not the locks, that's Commissioner Smith's bailiwick at this point, but the whole notion of opening up downtown Oregon City, so the first time in 100 years, we will have access to the Willamette River and the falls, which is the second largest falls in the United States of America. Other than that, I actually did have an opportunity to meet with one of the CFOs of Dave's Killer Bread and have a conversation with him about their expansion needs here in Clackamas County. They are now in the nation the #1 health food bread in the nation. They're expanding to Canada, they're looking to expand to Japan, and they are also entering into the markets on the East Coast. They work very closely with people who are barriered workers, oftentimes felons who have had issues, and they are developing a program that they'd like to share with other businesses on how to help barriered workers get into those kinds of jobs and how they as a business can help people stay employed. Other than that, I tomorrow have a meeting with Oregon State University with our economic development folks to see what they have to offer us here in the county. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith.
Thank you. I want to thank the folks that are in the audience who came to try to understand what's being done with the Eagle Landing development out there. I had a very thoughtful email this week I had two thoughtful emails. One on the Eagle Landing, a gentleman whom I know out in Colton, and he read the Oregonian article, and he raised a lot of the questions that Mr. Weisenberg did. And he knows me, and he just repeated some of the things in the article. And I was able to go through them one by one systematically and answer them according to the facts as we know them today. And I really appreciated it because, and because of that, I think I was probably prepared for tonight. I've also written an opinion piece on this, explaining how it's going to work and what's being done, and that will be published soon. But if any of you out there have questions on this, sometimes it's better to submit your question in email and then I can answer it, or if I can't answer it, I will send it to one of our experts in the county who can. But I want to thank you for that. I also had an email in response to our active transportation plan that we passed this week, and that's something that we are required to do by law. And our staff has identified 240 miles of bicycle paths or lanes that could be developed in the event that we got special funding for this. We don't have funding to do this. But one of the questions that I asked, because I come from the legislature, because the bicycle coalition and organizations are very strong. And they want this, and they demand this, and they want a bicycle bridge over the river, and they want special bike lanes on the highways or wherever, which I think is very dangerous. And there's no money for this. And so my question to them was, since I, as an automobile owner, I pay a fee if I have a recreational vehicle, if I pull my horse trailer, or a boat, or a camper, or a recreational vehicle, or a utility trailer, so many feet, and now I have to pay a registration fee on my 10-foot kayak that I paddle. But yet, when the bike proponents come demanding that government pave a path for them, they are not willing to pay a bicycle fee. because their excuse is, well, I own a car, I pay a registration on that. So I asked every single proponent of this fee, would you be, of this plan, I mean, would you be willing to pay a bicycle registration fee if we went ahead on this? Because we only get money for bicycle pass if it's a grant. And we only qualify for the grant if we have matching funds over here. So the bicycle registration fee could be our matching funds. They also, some were very demanding that we put a bridge over the Willamette River just for walking and bicyclers. And I said, that's interesting to me. I said, okay, and Commissioner Schrader comes from the east, and most of, a lot of the highways back there are tolls, as if anybody's traveled back there. And I said, okay, well, we could do a bridge over there. Would you be willing to pay a toll every time you walk across it and every time you bicycle across it? And there was a little bit of hesitancy because, gee, I'm not sure how it worked. Well, I says it's one way to pay for it, and Clackamas County could be a pilot project for the rest of the region, see how tolls go in our highways and our bridges. So I am not opposed to doing things that could be a benefit to a sector of society, but I want to know how we're supposed to pay for those. So bicyclers, I do think, should pay a registration fee because it seems to me that even the requirement for our federal funds and our state funds for roads and bridges require us to take a certain portion of that money for bicyclers. So that's a little food for thought.
Thank you. Well, I've got some wrap-up things here. I met with Representative Leininger on legislative matters this week. As Martha said, we both talked at the Cultural Tourism Summit. Commissioner Bernard and I served pancakes and sausage and eggs for the Backpack Buddies program. You know, Clackamas County has some outstanding employees that volunteer in their free time, and one of which is the Backpack Buddies program, which puts foods in those kids' backpacks because they won't have any at home. So it's a fantastic program. We only raised $358.9 because some other things were going on in the county at that particular time. This morning, many of us went to the Clackamas Chamber Public Safety Forum. It was very interesting, hearing all the police chiefs and the fire chiefs talk from this part of Clackamas County. And today, Commissioner Savas and I went down to the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office awards ceremony at Camp Withicum, outstanding awards for outstanding people in the Sheriff's Office. Next week, we have the Estacada Cities Dinner and a view of their Broadway rehabilitation area. And I'll be visiting the Oregon Youth Authority on request of the Department of Corrections, separate of my duties as Clackamas County Chair, because I started a program at Coffee Creek Correctional Facility where we bring fun in for inmate mothers and their children, because if we don't intervene and create a new relationship with those mothers, they're bound to repeat the ills that their mothers perpetrated upon society. And so it's a fantastic program that's spread through more than several prisons here in Oregon. This week in policy sessions, code enforcement violation priority list, the Board of County Commissioners voted against adopting priority list to enforce both urban and rural the same. You know, our rural areas are so far away and our budget is so tight on code enforcement that we can only police the urban growth boundaries more fully than we can the rural areas, because it just takes so much time to get there and, of course, get back. We put off increasing fees and fines and put that off, and we're going to split them up because a bunch of information came to us. We had a short day because some commissioners had to leave, and so we will revisit that because there's some proposals to take fees and fines up 100, 200, and even 300%. So some of us are very concerned about that. We voted to pay, and this is a 5-0 vote, the Oregon-California group, Oregon-California Lands Group, that is responsible for continuing to lobby so that we can get what they call secure rural funds back here. Now, what that is we used to get a share of the timber revenue that was cut here in Clackamas County. It was a huge share, $10 to $15 million a year, and almost all of that money used to be put into our roads. Now it's gone. So that relates directly to what another commissioner said earlier, that we're going to have to be responsible and step up and ask the people if they want to maintain their roads here in Clackamas County. Expect that in November, I believe. The Metro has asked us to have a joint meeting specifically to talk about our land use needs, which Commissioner Savas talks about a great deal. We have more land use needs right now than any other county. We do not have large industrial lots, land, which Commissioner Savas talks about a great deal. We do not have really enough growth area here in Clackamas County for not only industrial, but commercial and residential as well. There was a Metro resolution on transportation projects which passed 5-0 to not take a position, but to advocate on 4 issues of the county's legislative agenda. So there are some bills that we're backing, mainly in the Stafford area, that will bring about some changes, we hope, and also some industrial areas that have been offered to us in Senate Bill 716. Mary is going to put up something else, and that is the 2015 town hall meetings. Now, this is the first time we've gone topic specific, but Grow a Vibrant Economy will be the topic. It'll be at the Stafford area, Athey Creek Middle School. That's the Stafford exit on 205. And the date is Tuesday, April 21st, 2015 at 6:30 p.m. So that's coming up very soon. The next one will be the topic of Build a Strong Infrastructure in Milwaukee High School, and you can see the date, June 17th. Then Ensure Safe and Healthy Communities. It'll be in Canby, Monday, August 31st. And then the topic Honor, Utilize, Promote, Invest in Our Natural Resources. That'll be in Welch's. Now, you'll note that these themes are ones that we've adopted on a 5-0 vote for our goals for Clackamas County, and they're tied in with our strategic plan as well. So these are very important goals, and you can see that this is not necessarily for the locals to come. It's for anybody to come in this particular situation to any of these 4 that they wish. And finally, what I call the Clackamas County Unsung Heroes. Last weekend, we hosted a dental fair that assisted 120 residents in needed dental procedures that they had no insurance for, had no other way to pay for it. One of the dentists who dedicates their time for free is Dr. Fred Bremer, DMD. Dr. Bremer has volunteered at numerous dental outreach efforts with Northwest Family Services, Compassion Connect, Homeless Veterans Stand Down Event, and Mission of Mercy. Dr. Bremer serves on numerous community groups where focus is to improve access to dental care. North Clackamas Social Service Needs Roundtable and Clackamas County Dental Fair Task Group. In addition, he is currently working on an innovative project to encourage and incentivize other Clackamas County dentists to volunteer their services for those in need. Dr. Bremer is always available as a reliable community volunteer and uses his expertise in dentistry to provide guidance and dental triage support services. So good on you, Dr. Fred Bremer, a great volunteer in Clackamas County. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm still amazed that you all stuck around for this. You know, you're waiting for a little more excitement? I don't know. But I certainly appreciate you being here, and I know the commission feels the same. There being no further business before the commission this date, this meeting is adjourned.